Okay, I wasn't really going to weigh in on this issue. I felt others have done a good enough job speaking on it. But, I'll give you my 2 cents on the matter. Okay, gun control. Number one, of course we need some sort of gun control for people, right? We do. It's just one of those things. Now, I agree with many talking points from both people on both sides of the fields. Those who are against it say not necessarily that maybe a standard 9 round handgun or firearm, whatever you like to refer to it as, isn't the big deal, but when you add things such as extended clips and scopes and suppressors or silencers, then it becomes a problem because then you go from standard protection to more so of a vigilante, mercenary sort of outlook. So I understand what they mean. Now, on this side, they're saying, well, I have the right to bear arms. Personally, I'm in the middle somewhere. I do believe any man or woman should have the right to protect his or her loved ones or assets that they've accumulated and worked hard for while they're here. I do believe everyone has that right to, protect themselves. Now, some of the people who are not for the use of firearms, as far as for the average person, law-abiding citizens, consumption for use of protection, they seem to forget that it takes time to call a police officer. Usually police officers show up and investigate after something has taken place. To keep it in perspective and to keep it in reality, things happen in a matter of seconds and minutes. Yeah, I mean, the likelihood of you having time to call a police officer and have enough luck for them to be somewhere near, and even then, things happen that quickly. So you have that choice. If you're not a person who's armed, then don't get me wrong, even if you're armed, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to reach your firearm. Now, I'm not in support of others who are for firearms who say, well, hell, we should all be armed and, walk on the streets, so forth and so on. I'd rather not go back to any sort of wild, wild west days. For reasons being, if something just generally breaks out on a busy intersection or a busy shopping area and, bullets get to flying, who knows who may get hit. To me, it'll cause too many innocent casualties. But I do believe inside your home you should be able to carry a weapon. But I understand those who live in bad neighborhoods. I can understand and sympathize with why they would want to walk the streets with a firearm. Hell, I feel the same way many a times also. So I understand it, but I don't think it's necessarily the right answer to it. So I guess some will say, well, hell, if that's not the answer, then what is the answer? The answer is better regulation. And I mean that to say that when you let, the average Joe open up a firearm shop just because they have the money or resources to do so, and you don't adequately enforce laws that make them have to keep their shops secured in a way where the chances of something being stolen are slim to none, then you create this problem because, it's not like people are sitting around manufacturing firearms. The average citizen, I mean, not those who are actually within that business, but the actual citizen with that type of welding and, welding equipment, excuse me, and accessories to go along with it, making that a sort of an underground black market and saying, here, have that, here, have that. Sure, countries may get supplied in that way, but we're talking about general crime, state to state. What happens is gun stores get broken into and they get sold, or a gun store owners themselves these crime syndicates. So that's where you start. That's where you start because when you regulate that, the likelihood of not even likelihood. I just think you'll deal a better blow to keeping guns out of the hands that we don't want them in. I don't have a problem with the guy who goes to, the man or woman who works 9 to 5 and who just wants to protect his home in case the wrong element comes in and tries to harm or steal from him. I don't have a problem with that man owning any sort of firearm, be it from handgun to mid-range assault weapon to a long-distance rifle. I don't have any problem with that. It's the fool who doesn't have an issue or any reason to be looking over his back, but who just wants to tote weapons for no reason. That's the guy that I don't want with it. And obviously the criminal element who just does shit with a firearm for the sole purpose of financial gain or shit, some even for fun. So those are people that I wouldn't like to see with a firearm. Now, getting back to the ultimate point of this video, the Second Amendment, right? The right to bear arms. Depending on who you are and the kind of perspective you're viewing the Second Amendment from, it can be interpreted very loosely. I mean, it says arms. You have to remember back in those days exactly how the firearms looked, what they did. Now we're talking, I don't know about how many years ago, maybe 200 something years ago. I'm not too sure. I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me. But I believe about 200 something years ago. I believe they were still using black powder in muskets, So, I mean, when you think about a firearm and that, like, as opposed to the semi-automatic and automatic firearms of today, it's two totally different dynamics we're talking about. You understand? I mean, back then, guys had to load the powder, and I believe it was that fuse that had to be lit. And, you shot and you had to go through that whole rigorous process over again. Now, I mean, you slap a kit, you slap a clip in, you lock load, and, you're pretty much ready to go. So, people who interpret the Second Amendment as, well, I should be able to arm myself in whatever way I can afford, I should be able to do so. Okay, I mean, if a guy could afford himself surface-to-air missiles, should he be able to buy those and house that in his backyard? Some people would say, yeah. How would you like it if you lived in a neighborhood where a guy had that sort of weaponry, and if he bumped the shit wrong or accidentally sat on a button one day, he could fuck everybody up? It wouldn't sit so cool with you, would it? So that's the point that I'm trying to make. I mean, it's really a double-edged sword at the end of the day. Like a lot of life's issues are, it can always be looked at from both sides, and you can always see why both people have valid points. To me, if we can just keep the weapons out of the hands of guys who intend to use them for bad things, that's their sole purpose. Me personally, I hope I would never have to use a firearm. I actually value human life. But to others, the price of life is very cheap. It's almost non-existent. So, I don't know. To me, it's a double-edged sword. I think it solely depends at the end of the day, what sort of weapon somebody feels as though they should be able to own. I mean, if a dude could afford a F-18 jet, should he be able to purchase that? I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I could see why people would say, well, hell, I mean, if you could afford it, why not? On the other hand, I could see why that wouldn't sit so well with others. So, I don't know. What do you think? Comment, rate, subscribe. If you don't want to, I mean, that's cool. I mean, you may just want to pass it on or debate with somebody else. Um, okay, well, that's it.